Hi guys. All right. You want to get some goals? Let's put some goals over here. All right. And I need you a little quieter. I might even quit out of that temporarily. There we go. Done for the background. Oh, it's nice. Okay. Spreadsheets are out. Yeah. It is a morning spreadsheet. Please, in the meanwhile, vote in the background. That's better than the rest of it. So I roughly want to check out. I think we need a lot of work for these builds is what I think. The last season builds were very powerful builds, but they weren't particularly early game builds that we were looking at, and they were on a fairly solved meta, with the exception of the Chosen, which were just kind of like a bigger threat in that meta. So I think this morning we're looking to just rethink some stuff, kind of start a little bit further back, look at some early game builds, and then look at some kind of a little bit more varied of a build setup. And eventually we'll find that most of these builds will probably get retired anyways, because they're probably just not as efficient as some of the other builds, but I want to check them out. So my rough list, and feel free, chat, to add to this if you think there's more that we should look at, especially stuff that I'm forgetting. So please point that out. I'm looking at early carries, looking at early whip brothers, probably whip, cleaver, spect, quick hands kind of stuff. I'm looking at overwhelm and fearsome guns, possibly some other overwhelm or fearsome specs. I want to build a headhunter, at least one headhunter build, probably two. I probably want a melee headhunter and a ranged headhunter build if I can. I want to look at fitting grenades in. They seem to be really cool, the grenades. A lot of utility there. They may not be super powerful individually, but having the ability to be like, oh, you can move out of zone of control seems really powerful. Early fodder builds, dodge builds, fencer builds, maybe a wounding build, and then duelist builds. I want to stay away from reach specialists because I think they're a trap. I think reach positions are where you level all of your brothers, and I think having someone specializing in that almost never gets any play. What I expect for that. So that's the goal this morning. I'm expecting this takes an hour or two, maybe a little longer. We'll see. Because we got to come up with straight up builds for this again. All right. I think you guys can see this on the screen. Let me also fire up the perk calculator. And yeah, okay. So that's the goal. Cool. Morning, guys. How's everyone? How's everyone's Tuesday? Oh, wild, it's Tuesday. Anyways, here we are. So we need like 12 more of these things. So I think these archers are really close to perfect from what we want. Get out of here. It travels. My wife has abandoned me to the tender mercies of her parents' place, alone with them. That will be exciting. Tried some better brothers because of me, and it's hard. Yeah. Yeah, the game is challenging, which is fun. Okay, what do we want to start with first, chat? Oh, Untold Lore. How did the title actually say? No, it doesn't. How do I do strike through in Twitch chat? The Discord for strike through. Is there a way to fit headhunters into archers? It's a goal. And brave the Iowan wastelands. Yeah, she's headed back for orientation stuff for her college teaching. I haven't really looked at two-handed yet. Part of the things we're going to be messing with this morning. Okay, let's get started though. The DLC was a buff for range / melee dual specs. I think so. Unlikely to me.
A gleaming endowment.
The cat with the $30 donation. Thank you so much, man.
Just saw White Boy J. Cole F up big time yesterday. PLS put me back on the list.
Yeah, he did. He did fuck that up royally, didn't he? That was our banner. Banner did not help out much there. Nerf, are you handling donations for now? I don't want to maybe do. Barbarian start would be nice. Yeah, I like the Barbarian start. I think it's the strongest start in the game. Maybe with the exception of Gladiators. And I like that it does it. You do have 3 powerful brothers, but they are strong, not godlike. And the rest of the bonuses are very good for that too. Enough perks to pull off a nimble mega. Well, we could talk about these things. All right, so I guess we'll start. I guess probably what we'll do is we'll tweak the existing builds here and then see which builds we can maybe look into, like variations of these. Talk through what we have going on. I mean, I've done this a million times with these builds, so I'm not going to go too in depth of why these ones. But at the moment, we have archers, and these archers are archers / throwers, and they have been extraordinarily powerful versus pretty much everything. So the weakness of archers prior to this particular build was archers were very bad versus a number of different fights. They were very bad versus ancient undead. They were moderately bad versus zombie fights, although you have to bring a couple to hit that necro. And then they were pretty bad versus
glad to be back for more death.
Chosen. I think you homie chop for 25 bucks, man. You guys are being generous. But this resulted in 2 problems, right? The first is you have a bunch of archers who aren't good in every fight, so they tie up inventory space, or rather roster space, and they don't help you in some of the most important fights in the game. So and then B, we don't have an answer to Chosen without this. So this was our answer to Chosen, and it was very, very, very strong. If I had to star some of these, and I think we should go through and just kind of look at that. Anticipation is maybe. I'm not yet sold on the fact that we can drop anticipation. Like, I kind of don't believe it, but we'll see. Recover was always a little weak on these guys. It felt kind of like, I mean, maybe we could do this as highlighting. It's just been too long since I've highlighted it in Google Sheet. How the fuck do I do that? This is conditional formatting too, right? Probably not. It's probably just green. I don't want it to be conditionally formatted right now. Fine. Maybe we'll deal with that in a minute. Why am I transparent? Helps for streaming, obviously. One of the first things I did when I started streaming was become transparent in real life. Wait, why did we just change all the sizes on this? Make it smaller text. How did I get smaller text in a different font out of that? I did. The whole thing went to 9. Anyways. I don't quite remember the Google settings for this, but we can figure it out in a minute. Yeah. Real life blueberry. Yep. Recover is important for big fights, maybe. So going through this list again, so anticipation and recover are both kind of maybes. Nimble is not a maybe. Berserk is not a maybe. Killing frenzy is a possible, but seems less likely as something to be modified. Quick hands and throwing spec are important, and duelist seems kind of important to me too for these. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. I go over the new problem? Sure. New problems are I don't know if we know all the new problems, honestly. I guess we're not really building around problems right now. I guess the Geist change. I mean, if we had to list problems, they are the Geist change a little bit. Nomads with dodge, essentially. I guess it would be swarms of nomads. And it would be, I think that's really it right now. I mean, maybe Ifrits, but probably not. I think more realistically, what we're doing is, I guess there's other problems, right? It was an Indom and Indom nerf here. And then it was buffs to not to overwhelm, to fearsome, Headhunter, Indom nerf. I guess there's more too. Hold on. Which is, we now have Headhunter problems. And we have buffs to fearsome, Headhunter, and what's the last one? Headhunter problems, Indom nerf. Oh, that's not what we do. Also adrenaline nerf. Buffs to fearsome, buffs to Headhunter, buffs to, what else? There's another pretty good one. All right, Headhunter problems, adrenaline nerf, Geist buff. Already did Geist buff. 9 lives. 9 lives doesn't count. There's another one I want to use. One of the later ones. What is the later ones? Don't have the. I guess I have the list right here. There were buffs down here, right? What was it? Indomitable nerf, killing frenzy the same. Duelist. There were slight buffs to duelist, although I don't think it's playable buffs. Like I think duelist is fine, but I don't think the buffs change the playability of that. There's one of these down here. Maybe not. Oh, and then new weapons, right? Won't be bold. I don't know why. I've never enjoyed the Google versions of these compared to Excel. New weapon system. Yeah. This is kind of what we're looking at. This was it makes you so if you give a duelist a consumable and offhand just straight small power buff. I don't think it does though, Glees. My understanding, you still don't get the, we just checked it out, right? You don't get the two-handed bonus. So when there's two things that make a duelist do more damage, right? The first is the damage buff from only having a single handed weapon wielded with both hands. And the second is the duelist perk itself gives you additional armor penetration if you're using a weapon that satisfies the duelist requirements. Those are the two things you get when you're using a one-handed weapon as a two-hander, or as your only weapon. Thank you, Galg, the tier 2 sub, man. Million months, 73 months is crazy. And my understanding is when you have grenades or nets in your hand, you still do not get the two-handed buff. So you'd get the armor pen if you're running duelist. So I think that still makes that useless, right? Because you really want 25% damage buff is a massive buff in this game. Just not a lot of ways to get that. So I guess there's one other thing, another change here is using consumables more. Yeah, no double grip with nets and bombs. So I think when I look at it that way, although I am tempted, thank you by the way for the sub Nucaic T, Nucaius T. I think the other thing I would like to do with that, or rather the take home for me is if I'm losing my damage buff on a duelist from putting this other crap on, I'm probably not putting this other crap on. So I expect when I think about what we want is we probably want our core specs, and then we probably want some specialist kind of stuff, probably. But we might, the point being that we're probably going to try to fit all of the utility stuff on a few core characters. And I'm kind of thinking these core characters might be whip bros. We'll see. Yeah, me too, Comfy Cat. That's why I added this last one. Is because the potion change, potions being entire fights, those can be game changers now. My general sense of this, and I haven't got to late game to prove this yet, my general sense is we are a little bit weaker as players relative to the enemies than we were before. I think Indom, the nerf to Indom is just a nerf, and the Adrenaline nerf is a pretty big nerf too. I think they just both really changed the way that the game's going to play out. So let's look at this. So that's kind of, these are the problems I want to solve today. That's why we're starting with this. Any of the retinue stuff affect your builds? Not really. They don't really do things directly in combat. They do a lot of stuff around combat, like further see more, get paid more, find things easier, this type of shit. We were nerfed and the enemies got big buffs. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. And I think the only major behavioral changes I think that pokes us for is one, what are we going to do in the fights where we used to rely on Indom to make us survive? And two, what are we going to do about some of the enemy abilities that existed before but got stronger? Geist, the ones that come to mind are Geist, I think is spelled like that. Headhunter enemies and Fearsome are the ones that come to mind with that. Oh, I think you can still Indom cycle on Lindworms. I don't think that's going to be a problem. So I was thinking about this. I was thinking where you could still use Adrenaline. You could still use Adrenaline on, so the Adrenaline changes. It's not that it's no longer playable. It's now it went from 0 cost to 1 cost. So it's hard to do recover Adrenaline combos on it. But there's still times where the Adrenaline could be good. So I think we're going to go through some builds and kind of work through what we're starting with and where we can change that. So start with that. So I think megas are going to be just as important as they always were. Megas are always the same thing, and maybe I almost need like another line with this. Maybe I will add another line to this, which is kind of their point, right? And this is damage everywhere. And we want full row, central, and bold. And these are cheap melee defense. And we don't want a lot of these, right? Like archers, you can have like 4 and you're probably happy. There's fights where your back rank, it's really hard to run a higher back rank, and it is the numerical assist. It's hard to run like a 4-8 layout. It's much easier to run like an 8-4 layout or a 6-6 layout or one of these deals, right? Because you need your range characters to not ever be in melee so they can do their thing. So there's a limit to the number of range characters that you can effectively wield, because you're just basically blocked by the way that the fight mechanics work out with that. You probably never want more than 6 back rank characters ever. It'd be hilarity for the 16 months. So if you end up with something like 4 archers, a banner, and like some sort of reach specialist or a location to level a reach guy, then I'm okay with that. Not sure if it's okay to build on another streamer's chart. I mean, this is a public resource that I have available for my community. You're welcome to download it, or rather create a copy for yourself and do whatever you want with it, quite honestly, man. Not at all worried about that. So we want something like 3 to 4 of these, ideally, that are ready to go. I mean, and this spec destroys like almost all the late game enemies out there. It's slightly weak versus orcs because of orcs' ability to rearrange your line whenever they feel like it. But other than that, almost all the late game enemies are vulnerable to these archers. They're good versus Necros. They win the fights versus Necros. They're incredible versus Ancient Undead, and they're incredible versus Chosen. They're medium versus Unholds, and a little weak versus Orcs. So we're gonna be checking those out. So, all right. Well, you're certainly welcome, Graves. I mean, you've been hanging out in channel, and welcome to hanging out in channel a little bit. We seem to interact strangely sometimes. But you're certainly welcome to offer suggestions to the builds we're trying to do. If it's the rough idea is, hey, these are your goals. My goals are literally on the left-hand side of the screen. Here's some things that can help work towards that. Great, let's do it. Do some brainstorming for that. So anyways, of these, I'm just going to star these, right? Anticipation, Recover, and Killing Frenzy are the only things I can see that realistically can be moved from this. the quick hands and the type of things we'd like. Let's not worry about this stuff for now. This stuff is all information for people just like tuning into this build sheet from zero. Like, what are they looking for? We kind of get a rough idea what we're looking for this. But the types of things that we'd like to fit onto the archer builds are Headhunter. Seems like it's going to be very good for archers now. It feels like it's going to be very good for almost anyone who's capable of 2 or 3 shotting somebody. Seems like it's going to be very, very good. So that's something I would like to add to this build if we can fit it in. Bags and belts seems more and more relevant with the number of consumables and things that are being thrown in there. I'm not entirely certain it's relevant for archers, since they may not need it to quite the same degree. I'm okay with archers going into a chosen fight that run a single pack of arrows and 2 packs of javelins. Like, that's really strong for chosen fights. We'll see about the anticipation comment. We were trying to test that in this playthrough, and I have the initial response to not having anticipation was this. It makes it harder to position your archers. And it leaves them a lot more vulnerable to wounds, from my take on that. And what do we gain by dropping anticipation on an archer? And the answer for me wasn't a lot. So maybe for example, take a scenario here where we drop recover and anticipation, and we only drop recover because we basically go, all right, well, now we can level fatigue every single roll on the archer. And we do. We roll fatigue every single time on an archer. We roll ranged attack every single time on an archer, and then we do some spacing of either initiative plus HP or HP plus resolve or something, right, for the last one. So if we do something like that, then maybe there is an argument for dropping anticipation, because we get some value out of dropping that perk that is equal to or better than that, right? My concern is we drop anticipation and we are stuck with a character who only really needs 2 stats anyways. If we only need, if we're only really rolling ranged attack and stamina, do we need to have this ability to make our character less survivable versus all the range threats by not leveling range defense? Now maybe we can just drop anticipation and still level range defense. Maybe that's a thing. Although anticipation was a very nice thing for range defense. And I hear this argument of, if you level range defense on one character, another one of your characters with lower range defense will get shot. Sure, but a lot of my other characters are more able to take punishment, or better able to take damage. If my Battleforged 300 armor guy up front takes an arrow shot, he's not so worried about it. If my, especially if he's running around with a kite shield or something. But my archer's getting hit for damage often wounds or wipes them out entirely. So I don't know. So we have some options there. This is a discussion I think we should have. But let's go through a look at the other things as well, and we'll come back and maybe we can actually get some finalized thoughts on some of these. That's the line I'm thinking you're going down, was drop anticipation but level range defense. Yeah, possibly. I mean, that's going to make them less survivable than before, but you're right. If all we have to do is get our range defense to a point where it's basically better than other people, then maybe you're right. Maybe we don't have to do a lot of that. Oh. All right. Let's take a look at the mega tank stuff. I think this is going to be fairly similar. This was not really... So the things that actually surprisingly were maybe something to look at was recover. I've tried mega tanks who were nimble mega tanks, and they were just earlier. They basically weren't very good, because it just doesn't seem to scale as well, especially for like cleavers. A lot of near death stuff that was like the end of the life for them. Underdog has to be Battleforge, has to be Indomitable. So I don't think we can get rid of Indomitable. Haunt was one of the weaker pickups, which I loved for a very, very long period of time. But it's one of those ones that you could maybe let go of. And then I don't know about Adrenaline being necessary anymore on these, especially with the Adrenaline nerf. I think Megas might be one of the classes that the Adrenaline nerf actually removes. I think you could still get Adrenaline in Duelist builds, Wyo. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. So those are kind of the ones, and I guess I'll 3-star the ones that seem like the most likely to go, and then 2-star the ones that could probably go, but probably are going to be harder to get rid of. And the types of things I'm looking for the to add to the megas are Steelbrow, Ironbrow, I think it's called. I do think the new Headhunters are going to be a huge pain in the ass, Headhunter mobs, because you're gonna, like yesterday when we were fighting the Ifrit and we were learning what the large Ifrit rock does, and it was just one-shotting people from full with all of their defensive perks intact. I think there are going to be enemies now that do that. And I don't know where we're going to see Headhunter. Headhunter, to the best of my knowledge right now, is on Master Archers and Necro Savants, and I'm not sure where else it is. Maybe Sword Masters, maybe Sergeants, something like that. But you don't see it very often. But I do think it's going to one-shot people. You're going to be in scenarios where your guy just gets smashed. The first hit hits, and then Headhunter guarantees the second one hits head, and you're just going to die. So I think for characters who are repeatedly being hit, especially for characters who are designed to be hit a lot, we might want Ironbrow up there. It's not been a very good perk overall, Ironbrow, right? I think the math, I think someone in the community ran math on this at some point. It was basically worse than Colossus pretty much always. But I'm not sure that's always going to be the case now. And we might just, and we might end up with both of these things, right? So, we should also look at a nimble version of this, because I'm not sure, up to now I haven't been very impressed with nimble mega tanks, but we should look. Steelbrow and Ironbrow? Okay, Steelbrow then. Whatever it is. The one that makes your head not take additional damage when you get smashed in the head. Okay. So that's the changes I want to make for Mega. Two-handed Adrenaline builds seem to probably be dead. This was probably the most dominant late game build out there. And I think it's probably dead. So this one needs like an entire rework. Since, I don't know, I don't know. We built these a long time without Adrenaline, so we could maybe make that work again. Adrenaline seems to be dead in general. I don't think it is. 9 lives instead of Steelbrow on the tank. I really don't like 9 lives. It seems really bad to me. It seems to have all the same problems it always used to have. And those have been slightly offset by the fact it removes the bleed, and it removes status effects, which is nice. And it gives a melee defense boost for the round. But I'm not sure about that. I'll put it on the list of things to consider, but it seems very unlikely to me that we want that. But we can throw it in there as something to consider. We can talk through that versus like Steelbrow. I think Adrenaline has probably 2 remaining uses that I see. And maybe I'm wrong here. So if you guys have more thoughts, feel free to put it out. The first of those thoughts is, for me, Adrenaline probably is something you can now use on, if you have some sort of dedicated backliner, you maybe can use Adrenaline to eat up extra stamina that you might have around. And the second would be for, I think you can probably still do it with Duelists. Right? So your max, so you have 9 AP, you can generate 4 off of Berserk, right? So your max HP, your max AP for a round ends up being 13. So presumably you can do something like 4 attack, 4 attack, 4 attack, 12, and then pop Adrenaline. I don't know who realistically is going to have the stamina to do something like that, but you could do something like that, right? Where you end up getting like 5 attacks off or 6 attacks off in an ideal scenario in a row, end of the round, then pop it, Adrenaline kind of deal. So, should I explain why I would take 9 lives on a Mega? No. Not like I'm not willing to. It's just I don't know why I would do that quite now. We'll talk through the pros and cons of it when we kind of roll down. Our goal is to kind of identify what we want to do to these specs and then go through and try to design some specs that we can walk into the next playthrough with. Adrenaline can work well with Overwhelm. Yeah, I don't really have very high opinions of Overwhelm. I find Overwhelm to be a fairly underwhelming pickup generally for me. All right. So those are the ones we're looking at Mega Tanks. So let's look at the two-handers. The two-handers are going to have a large number of changes, right? Because the first is Adrenaline. Adrenaline is almost certainly going to go on the two-handers because I don't think it makes any sense for them anymore. They cannot use that. I mean, I guess they can. It's just it really does matter. How do I say this? I wonder how much it really does matter is what I was trying to get out there. Again, 6 and 6 is 12 and 1 is 13. It's just you're going to hit stam issues, right? Overwhelm is worth it on one fast range character to help with big threats. No.
A new subscriber arrives. It
Johnny
fills
Will.
you with determination.
For you, the two-handed cleaver build, yes, the two-handed cleaver build, which we have, I think is one of the ones that we're going to modify to try to take advantage of the bombs because we're already doing this. You're constantly beat silly by those zombies. Any build to take care to bank and maybe give some payback. Zombies are not a threat. That was just a pure banner issue, not having a good enough banner. I don't think zombies are going to be much of a threat still. I think Geists are going to be a lot scarier. Undervalue dodge. Follows you think overwhelm is kind of bad. Do you not understand how to relate to other human beings? Like, I keep trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, man. Try to be civil. There's so much fucking judgment in that statement. If you undervalue dodge and it follows you think overwhelm is kind of bad. I have lots of reasons why I think both of those are bad. I'm happy to talk about why, for me, my experience with this game has presented these as pretty bad traits. If you have other experiences where you can be like, hey, here's a scenario where it's been really good for me. Maybe you could consider adding this into your roster of things you do. Like, hey, that's a much more reasonable way to interact with that. I'm all for input from you guys in chat, especially you, those of you who have played this game as much or more than I have. By all means, I'm interested in your input. But try to do it like we're having a civil conversation as opposed to you fucking talking down and telling me shit. I'm not really interested in that kind of behavior. So my experiences with Overwhelm have been a lot of your time as a player is about repositioning and looking for those openings. And that almost always is not stand in position and spam your shots. So for value for Overwhelm, you need to be fast. And almost all the enemies in this game start faster than you. And initiative tends to be a fairly bad stat to level. It doesn't have a lot of utility except going faster than them. And a lot of times you don't want to go first or ahead of them anyways. That's not always true. When you're already engaged with a bunch of orcs, it's really nice if your two-handed brothers are just naturally faster than orcs. You deal with a lot of the damage incoming by going first and killing those things off the field. So things like that are really nice. So, but from my perspective, and we did a run where all of our archers had overwhelm, I just didn't find that to be a useful mechanic. I didn't want to have to spend my damage rolls on characters that I'm debuffing. I didn't want to have to position to get clear shots with that. And nothing else seemed to attack enough times to do it while being naturally fast enough, especially with the addition of armor and fatigue to reliably provide that debuff. I do think debuffing enemies is great if you can do it. I use things like whips for disarms and stuns to prevent their damage. That type of ability where you can use something else to prevent their damage, especially on their big hitters, is really nice. And if you're farming, like if you're at the end of a fight and you're like daggering down a champion or something, it's really nice if you can go ahead of them and just like mass overwhelm them so they can't do anything. But I don't want win more strategies. I don't need things that help me take advantage of the things where we're already doing well or already strong. I want things that help me survive the fights that are really scary. So, all right. Overwhelm work on AoE consumables and guns. I don't know about the consumables. It presumably works on guns. So yes, one of the things we're looking for is, it's kind of on the left over there, is an overwhelm / fearsome gun build. Guns seem really bad to me so far. It's been really clunky. It doesn't do good damage. It doesn't have good armor pen. It just doesn't seem any good to me so far. But we're going to build at least one brother with that to see if we can make it work with something like overwhelm and fearsome. Thoughts on the new dagger? I haven't liked it, but it doesn't mean that it isn't good. It just means I haven't used it very well or used it very much. My thoughts on the dagger is this, right? Like the basic attack of a dagger has no armor penetration at all and does fuck all to everything. No one uses the dagger for the basic armor attack. You use the dagger for puncture, and puncture ignores armor entirely. And the new dagger gives up the ability to puncture. Isn't puncture the useful part of a dagger? So what is the new one? It's like an execute style ability. Execute style abilities are okay. I think the cleaver execute's fairly good. Initiative dodge assassin with the new dagger and deadly blow can get 4 hits around. I'm not against trying. I think it's on there, right? I have a dodge build up there. I'm all for giving it another round. We gave it a round though starting this expansion. It seemed bad. All of my enemies either daze me, which reduces my initiative by half, or they fucking throw dirt on me, which reduces my initiative, or we just tire out and reduces my initiative. All the way the dodge seems like it's not a very consistent for me defensive buff yet. If we found a fast adaptation works with the gun, I tested that a little tiny bit this morning with the remnants of our save file from yesterday, and the issues with that were a couple fold, right? The first was, what I got it to do is, if you shoot and miss, you get +10 on fast adaptation. If you shoot and hit, so I fired into 4 targets, missing 3 of them and hitting 1, and I finished that round with +0. it wasn't consecutive, so it wasn't like the first target rolled on was 1 hit rate, and then the second target rolled on was +10, and the third was +20, etc. So you didn't get that like incrementally across that attack. And unfortunately, the target that got hit was the final target in the round. So of the 4 target rolls, the guy getting hit was the 4th one. So you might end up, I don't really know how it works yet, you might end up with like fast adaptation. You might end up, if you shoot 4 targets and you hit the first, second, and third target but miss the 4th target, you could potentially end up with a +10. You don't end up with a +20, because I had one where I missed everything and only got +10, but I'm not even convinced you'll get that +10. So the answer to that is I don't think so. All right, what else did I miss? Death blow of the new dagger has increased armor pen. Interesting. So yeah, maybe there's something to be said about that. We could look at it. We could look at new dagger. All right. H. Rolling dagger is so strong. All right. Sure. I don't know if it's terrible on the handgun, but it's not any better. Unless you can put a net in the offhand and proc deadly blow on your own and overwhelm. What is deadly blow? I thought about normal throw. Okay. If we don't get to actually doing this, we won't ever get through it, and it's gonna take a while to get through it. I suspect most players are here for the game as opposed to the spreadsheeting. The new dagger attack does more damage than pen. How much more pen is it? Like, all right. So I guess you get it. I don't know. Maybe we have to look at the dagger at some point, because it seems like crap to me, but we'll see. All right, 2-handed adrenaline. So what are we likely to change from this? We're likely to drop adrenaline, although maybe we could talk about if there's some way to get that in there. What do we want to pick up in here? We probably want to pick up some sort of survivability. So currently this is Brawny Colossus or Battleforged Nimble. It might for sanity be nice just to put Colossus on all of these builds. Since a lot of the enemies are now doing, oh, Indom is the other problem here, isn't it? Right? So are we even taking this anymore? What could we pick up if we dropped both Adrenaline and Indom out of this build? Like what types of things would want to go in there? Yeah, I played Eve for a number of years. Well, I had a lot of, I have not guide videos. I have stuff up on Eve if you want PvP videos from that from a million years ago on my YouTube. Enemies have a lot more range defense now. It's interesting. Advantage. That's an interesting one that I normally don't play with. So my feeling about reach advantage, and we played a couple runs with it and a couple runs without it, was there were, and maybe I just need to be happier about things like this, right? It's okay to have an ability that isn't strong all the way through a fight. It's totally okay for dodge to be really good early and not be so great towards the mid to end of a fight. You know, if your ability helps you when you need it to help you, that's fine. And if it doesn't help you as much in some scenarios, but helps you more in some other scenarios, that's okay as well. We don't have to be there. So things like reach advantage were kind of situational like that for me. I found that most of the time reach advantage was somewhere like +3 to +4. It's like I probably hit 80% of the time on my good brothers later, but they're rarely am I hitting multiple targets, and I'm not hitting every single round either. Thank you, Patatul, for 34 months, right? So I found that reach advantage just wasn't something that I found useful a lot of the time. Now, if you have some insane brother, there might be an argument for that. If one of your brothers is just like stupid good melee attack, right? Then maybe you'd be like, wow, reach advantage is always at least +5. But I found Stam to be one of the Stam and just the inefficiency of a lot of the secondary attacks, right? Like what secondary attacks are you using on two-handed weapons most of the time to get the other elements of reach advantage? Yeah, if you kill somebody, you'll get your +5 there. But like, what are you using? What multi attacks do you tend to use on two-handed weapons? I occasionally will line attack with the sword, occasionally, sometimes, or sweep with the sword. Versus Orc Young, that happens a lot. Versus Zombies, that happens less. Sometimes if you can get positioned to attack a Geist, you're going to be doing that. But that's about it. I don't even like the two-handed hammer multi-attack. What it tends to do for me when I do that is it staggers a bunch of orcs, puts them at the end of the round all at once, and then pushes them off so they can fucking charge stun back into me. I hate that most of the time. Like most of the time when I use the two-handed hammer attack, I'm like, please don't knock them back. So I don't know, man. I wish the Bardiche was good as well. The Bardiche is such a pile of shit. So my point being that when is reach advantage good? Most of the time when I use reach advantage, it is a very small actual benefit to my brothers. But maybe there's something specific we can do with that. The fact that cleavers are a two-hand but can attack twice worth reach advantage, that's a really interesting question. Does reach advantage trigger twice with because if you switch weapons, you lose your reach advantage bonus, right? So if I switch from a two-handed cleaver to a whip, I lose my reach advantage stacks, right? Bardiche is very good in your opinion, but it's because of RA. What's RA mean here? The new pole sword would be good with reach advantage. Now the new pole sword is not good at all, I don't think. Dodge be better than reach advantage, pretty much always. I feel like that's my point, is that I don't think we're, but we'll look at this. We can look at this. We can think we probably need something else defensive here, right? So I mean, we could do this whole. This is very similar to types of things like this. Is there anything we're missing that they might want here? Steel Brow, possibly Relentless, possibly. What's the new one? Resilient. Not new, I guess. Two-handed sword's attack is 4 AP. Two-handed sword. 120 initiative after gear with hyena attachment on bow and daggers. Use very little fatigue. Oh, reach advantage. You like Bardiche with reach advantage? Yeah, the Bardiche is a bad damage axe. I can't remember right now the Bardiche stats compared to the longsword stats. But my dream was like axe penetration with axe damage with a line attack. That's what I was hoping the Bardiche would be, but the Bardiche is like a tuned down great axe. Like it does less damage than a great axe. So maybe like if I could get a legendary Bardiche, that'd be great. Because I love line attacks. Line attacks are much more useful in general than like the roundhouse. Roundhouse is pretty shit. I would love to build a lone wolf build, by the way, because I feel like there's so much stat scaling in lone wolf. If we could ever get that to actually be a viable build, it does feel like every time a brother is based around standing on his own, he just dies horribly. But maybe one day. All right, look at the rest of this. Caught up with this. Rotate may not be needed with the new smoke bombs is an interesting thought. I don't find the rarity of the base Bardiches to be an issue. I just don't find their damage to be good enough for what the trade-off is for that. The trade-off for running a Bardiche is the accuracy compared to a sword, and then the damage loss compared to the other two-handers. Five less damage, 20% less armor efficiency, and then 10% less hit chance, right? Or is it 5 now for Greatswords? I've forgotten. Quick hands from mid formation. We're looking at those builds right now. Lone wolf thrower archer. Oh, you can't have a thrower archer with. Well, I mean, I guess you could have a thrower. I don't think you want lone wolf on your archers. No. We tried a lone wolf necro hunter and it just wasn't as good. 5% accuracy on Greatswords right now. Gotcha. All right. I mean, maybe that makes the Bardiche comparable to the longsword now. Possibly. I'd have to look. Been a while since we looked at that exact math, but for me the Bardiche was just a letdown. It was not the dream. It was not my dream. Okay, so Colossus, reach advantage, Steel Brow, Relentless, Resilient. We want a nimble variant, right? We want to build a nimble and Battle Forge variants. Okay. This will be a lot better with Indom change. No. I don't think it will be any better. Got fixed. So it was doing too much damage, or it was not doing damage appropriately. Backstabber on two-handers? Doubtful. It's gonna be 5 accuracy most of the time, right? For a melee guy. Less than it was supposed to be. Which one's split man? That's the single target attack. Off the two-handed axe. It was doing less damage than it was supposed to. Wow, great axes were good before. You want to see some gameplay? Gameplay is going to be a little bit late, a little bit delayed today. Today we were doing spreadsheets to begin with. All right, this is one of the ones I'm more excited about, the two-handed cleaver bro, right? So I guess that I think we should flag rotate slightly. I think rotate is something that I consider absolutely mainstay to everybody. But mainstay to everybody because the ability to remove people from shitty situations is so clutch. And it's also a damage ability, right? It lets you get your two-handers in around early a lot of times by rotating with tanks and non-two-handers. But there is some argument with the smoke grenades if you don't need those. All right, so what about the cleaver bros? These are pretty close again. I mean, I guess we should probably evaluate just as a whole. RA, underdog. Okay, underdog. Dodge in general, the general effectiveness of this, right? All right, going through these. Thunder. I noticed a spike in dodge and misses during mid game. I don't know, Zero Baja. I don't know that you want to be throwing grenades in the bulk of your fights. Grenades were not cheap. I think grenades are going to be stuff that we want to use in hard fights. Granted, gentlemen might want to be renamed. Let's worry about the renames when we actually get the new builds down, right? I'm trying to outline what we're going to tackle this morning. And as if we make the outline larger and larger, we'll never actually get to filling it in. But I hear you. All right, the Cleaver Bros. Indomitable becomes questionable. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. If our whole front line doesn't have Indomitable, like, there's still something to be said about it. Even if maybe it's all the people who are, maybe it is only duelists that run, or people who have 4 AP attacks are the only people who get to run Indomitable, possibly. I think Recover is still going to be really important on all of the damage dealers. You kind of get trapped playing Killing Frenzy and Berserk. Really hard to get away from those on people who are reliably killing people, because it's one of the few damage bonuses you can get in the game, right? There just aren't a lot of perks that are pure damage bonuses. So taking the few perks that are is really sensible. I think clearly we don't want to be... I don't think we want to run Adrenaline on the two-handed cleavers anymore. I think the cleavers tend to stam out a lot. And I would like to get Backstabber on these, is one of the things I am interested in getting. For these guys. Possibly, anyways. I think with the really high availability of whips now, and their utility versus Geist, and their utility for dealing with large single target threats, like anyone with a two-handed weapon, it would be really nice to have early builds that focus on getting cleaver accuracy up. Tried No Fatigue. Battleforge Pathfinder. No. I still don't really understand how characters are gonna be stam neutral. Seems insane to me. The second they get hit, first of all, there's no weapon in the game that you can swing twice that is worth using. That's 0 stam, right? So we're looking at then just two-handed weapons, my perspective, where you're looking at essentially swing for 12. Generate 15 every round, and which is fine, as long as you don't ever get hit or ever want to multi-attack. I mean, I guess if you built that, then you'd build it without Killing Frenzy or without Berserk. You build some sort of like no Berserk, no Recover build, where you're swinging once per round. Is that worth something? Sound worth it to me. Finder and Master, you can every turn with just base fatigue. With what weapon? What weapon are you swinging twice with that? Because every two-handed weapon can swing with just the base fatigue. Every single one in the game can swing once. So what weapon are we getting an advantage on by being stam neutral? Anyways. Swing once. Why? What is the stam neutral portion of this then? Everybody swings once. You mean move one tile and swing once? See, that's interesting. Because I buy that. If you mean move once and swing a two-handed weapon once after moving. Yeah, maybe you could do Pathfinder with that instead of recover. Interesting. Possibly. Why has it been so long since I've done this Greater Full? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think the pole mace is a very good weapon from what I've seen. It just doesn't do a lot of damage. It does incredible damage to your brothers in the early game from raiders, but it seemed bad for everything else. Like again, my back rank position tends to be my leveling positions. My leveling positions want accuracy when they want anything else. So it's like a pike with less accuracy. So fatigue becomes a dump stat. That's interesting too, because that would allow your brothers to be a lot more survivable. Okay, but like finally, like Grades, this is the second or third time you brought up this build, but this is the first time you've effectively communicated it to me. The first time I've heard what you're saying, and maybe some of that's me, but maybe some of that is your presentation on that, because that becomes much more interesting when you start looking at the ramifications of that. If you can dump. Because on a frontliner like that, you always have to level melee attack and melee defense going into that, always. And then you're stuck for a unhappy mix of dealing with HP, fatigue, and resolve, all coming out of the same single roll each round. So if you can drop one of those, then the upside of that, the trade-off is then you give up efficiently using Killing Frenzy, but you do get something like additional resolve and HP compared to people running the Killing Frenzy builds, or not Killing Frenzy. I keep saying that Berserk builds with the Berserk Recover builds. Yeah, no, I'm pleased that I finally heard what you were saying, because that's an interesting build. That makes some sense to me. That's something like, okay, well, why would you want to do that? Well, something the pieces fit together. So that's very interesting. Like, to the point, like, I would try that, because that's also a very nice that's a nice way to deal with the fact that as enemies get harder, our backgrounds aren't getting better. It's not like we have more stats to play with. It's nice to have brothers that could then because finding dump stats is great, because if you can find dump stats, then you can specialize in the stats you do need, right? Just the whole point of this is all your characters in this game are mad, right? They need way too many attributes. Anyways, so I was really pleased to. Anyways, I'm pleased to hear that. That's an interesting idea. So we can throw that in there as the again, as one of the things we'd like to try, which is a 0 stam frontliner. Now that sounds like you can't move an attack if you are, for a build like that. You will be unable to move an attack if you are being attacked regularly, because the being attacked drains stamina. But I suppose if you're being attacked regularly, your frontliner is fine. He can just swing from that position. It's just that what you're trying to do is avoid having to level stamina and avoid ever having to take that round where you use recover. Maybe you even build recover still for Killing Frenzy kind of stuff. But that would be interesting, because then you could drop Berserk, drop recover, and drop and then not level. That's interesting. We should play with that. Did a move and attack 15 stam every turn, unless you get. Yes. Yeah. Right, you get the stam on your turn, right? So you're always going to have 15. So if it's a 12 attack off of a 2, you're always going to be able to take 1 step. Maybe not in Swamp. I don't know how it would work in Swamp. Swamp, what's the fatigue cost with Pathfinder for moving in Swamp? Drop rotate. Maybe. Okay. Your stam neutral, does that make dodge more appealing? A little bit. Dodge is fine. We just need to evaluate dodge. Like, I'm pretty sure that dodge is probably better than reach advantage on nearly every character in the game. Like, fairly certain about that. I'll have to do the exact math, but I'm pretty. It seems very likely to me. So, it's just, is it better than gifted ever? I don't know. It depends what we're getting. If we're getting like 10 melee defense, maybe that's comparable to a gifted roll. But all right. So the cleaver. So this is the cleaver burrows are going to be. These are. I don't know why it's 2-handed cleaver. These are kind of. These are maybe whips and bombs, right? Maybe what we're looking at: whips, bombs, and just cleavers. And then, what are we doing for the rest of these? The duelist builds here. There's some argument about this. And the rest of these get pretty locked up. Dominable is, again, a maybe. I don't see that build changing very much, honestly. That feels like one of the ones that are most likely to be unchanged. Too bad, because I like cleaver duelists. Kind of. Although I like orc cleaver duelists. And then, all right, Goblin Banner seems pretty solid too. So we could look at some of these. Okay. What is Rally? What's the cost of Rally? He plans some Fearsome Brothers. Yeah, see this list on the left here? So I've got it in 2 places. I've got the list on the left, and I've got in the center of the screen above me the kind of rough goals for this. So we should look at that. So these are okay. So these are the ones we actually have initially. Some of the other one-offs then are what? So if we look at, okay, let's see if we can get through this. We're never going to get through this. Considering buying this game, is it really good? Yes, it is really good. All right. So this is our basic generic archer. If we clone that, what does it actually look like if we were to try to get this other stuff in? So if we're just looking for Headhunter back on the archers, what is the most likely to drop? Can we build this with can we build this with no range defense? And if we build it with no range defense, what do we end up with? Like, what do we gain from this? We drop anticipation, pick up bullseye, or pick up Colossus, and then drop Headhunter in there pretty much at all. So what else would we gain? So by dropping anticipation, we drop the obligation to level range defense, essentially. Now nimble is enough for dedicated archers. I find that nimble is really good on archers, but if I am not leveling HP aggressively on archers, which I tend not to, because I tend to level range defense, range attack, and fatigue, then I do not have the points to both get very high HP and I don't take Colossus on them. So I have found nimble not to be enough alone. Nimble and Colossus might be enough. Nimble and leveling HP more aggressively because we're not leveling range defense might be enough. Goblins will be much harder with AP poison. Sure. Drop recover. I don't know if I can drop recover on archers or not. This is really something I found recover to be bad on archers like 90% of the time, and then the last maybe 5 to 10% of the time, it was incredibly good. Like the difference between winning and losing fights. Why I end up taking it. I don't really like recover on archers, but they're also very stamina intensive, and they often do not roll super high stam. How do you kill goblins with no range defense? I really don't know. Drop recover on archers. Use them more sparingly for burst damage. That doesn't sound like good advice. Recover's so good. You're not wrong. But all right, so could we build a no range defense build? If we did that, we would drop anticipation. We'd get shot a lot. And what would we want to get in there? We want to get in Headhunter. The goal. I do think Headhunter is going to be very, very solid on archers. It's already like late game, they will one shot. You know, it's fighting raiders, so who gives a fuck? But they'll one shot hordes of barbarians and nomads with bows to the head, or two tap them anyways. And I think double jabs to the head is going to be huge. Bags and belts is kind of a medium. All right, fearsome on archers. No, they already do. You don't need fearsome on archers. They already do enough body damage to do that for the things you're going to be hitting them with. So it would be something like this, right? So the recover comes out. Can we even fit this? So we're trying to do this, right? Bullseye, cover bow spec. And we're trying to do nimble, berserk, killing frenzy, quick hand. I guess we can take quick hands whenever we want to get past that. Nimble, berserk, killing frenzy. Duelist on these guys. 9. What's the last one? Wing spec. Like that. Would Headhunter be a better damage perk than Killing Frenzy? Want them both. Against Nomads, remember the Headhunter buff drops from an attack even if you don't hit. Your buff drops from an attack even if you don't hit? Wait, so you're not guaranteed, you're not, if you miss your second attack, you don't get Headhunter, you have to hit them both? Does that someone else confirm that? Good point, Mafia. Maybe stam pot recoveries. So how do the new potions work? Where do you take them? Do they have to be in inventory to take them? Or do you, like, let's say I wanted to put a stam recovery potion on a brother before the fight started. Where do I do that from? Frenzy worth it? Yeah. Duration for footwork? None. Fast adaptation over bullseye. Good. Campaign map. I see. I have one more perk if I go student here, do I? I do have one more perk. So what are we missing? We're missing one of the perks then. Student bullseye, recover, bow spec, nimble, berserk, killing frenzy, quick hands, duelist spec, and probably the headhunter perk is our last one, right? Yeah, something like that. Okay. Does this work for what we want it to do? Did we gain anything from this? What was it? There was another question about the archer that I don't really feel like I want. I don't really like footwork on archers. A, it's really stamina intensive, and B, like I feel like other people's job is to keep the archers safe, not the archers safe to get out of the way like that. Read Headhunter perk on the build planner. Stacks will drop on miss. Connecting with your hit or missing with your attack will reset the effect. That makes it less good. So the downside of this is no Colossus. So this is the single defensive perk on this entire brother is nimble. And we just dropped anticipation. So what this means is we will get hit more often by ranged attacks. We won't get hit less often by melee attacks. So we're still in the same boat as we were in terms of survivability, but we've increased our risk here. Headhunter's a no on throwing archers. Why would it be related to throwing archers or not? You're actually going to get the most value out of Headhunter probably in throwing weapons, right? Bring your archers to big goblins. Possibly, but how else am I beating big goblins with an adrenaline nerf and no archers? Get permission from a mod for that, Wyvern. Bring headshots huge? Yeah, it's gonna kill people outright. So we need like enough range defense to be like above our frontline brothers, is what you're saying? Possibly. Possibly. I mean the other things you could do. So some thoughts about this, right? Is I have not liked overwhelm archers, but let's assume for a second we wanted to do some version of that. I don't think we're going to be ever leveling initiative on these, which is fine. I don't like to level initiative, and I don't think it's useful when you're dug into a position and you want to attack the targets being presented to you. That's really useful. But like, I think it'd be something like this. Maybe we could say, hey, new Headhunter looks cool on paper, but it's really not good enough. And then we're just putting Colossus. But if we do this here, all we've done is drop range defense to pick up. We've dropped anticipation for Colossus, and that's it. Is that a change we really want to do? We didn't gain a lot there. What have we gained? We've gained the ability not to level range defense. So we're always leveling range attack, and what else? Always leveling HP, always leveling stamina. Maybe you get a little bit more out of that, because maybe at some point you actually level a little bit of what's the word? Resolve, and then get confidence from time to time. Yep, that's a good point, Nin. You do trade off. Getting more HP on your archers means that they're better able to tank a melee hit that they don't want to tank. So do we bother with this Headhunter on this or not? I love Headhunter archers. It's so satisfying, the one shot or two shot things because of Headhunter. And it's so satisfying to ignore body armor. And I think it is going to be extremely good with throwing weapons. You're going to like hit a barbarian. You're going to throw a duelist barbarian javelin into the head of a chosen. And then if he's still alive, you're going to kill him immediately with that. But you may not need it. It might be overkill. I'm pretty sure you two shot. I think it's 3 shots for chosen with javelins, and they just nerf the damage. I think you take Headhunter if you can get the melee defense. Range defense. I don't know why I don't think it matters one way or the other. Do we take any southern content for range defense? Good point, Nijaran. I guess technically I don't think so I guess range defense will help you versus Ifrit attacks, and it will help you versus the gun attacks, although we haven't been gun attacks, so I'm not sure what situation that will be in. Stamina potions are good. Drop recover for bags and belts. I don't need bags and belts in the archers. If I were to drop recover, it would be to pick up another damage. It would be to pick up Headhunter here. Headhunter and Colossus. It's just your next attack, Vandrosh. Yeah, so that's true too. Get gunned only versus southern armies. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where cover is bad. Yeah, okay, but this is, remember that all answers are answered by opportunity cost? Go ahead and say that for like, you can say that for like 99% of these perks, right? It's not that having a perk that gives you something positive is bad. It's that the perk you could have taken to give that would have given you something was better than the one you took, right? Okay, so we're kind of, it's somewhere between this. It's either Colossus or Headhunter. I'm a bit scared to run a brother that is just nimble with no range, like not leveling range defense or leveling very minimal range defense, and then just leveling HP. That's scary to me, especially early game. Like this character has no perks that help him survive the early game at all. Move bullseye. I don't chat. You guys need to really. I've seen a couple people suggest this now, and I really need this. I need the mentality for removing bullseye clarified. Why do you guys think bullseye is even remotely removable from a build? What do you do with archers, right? You're trying to take out high priority targets that you can't reach with your melee. The things that immediately come to mind with this are necromancers, and to a lesser degree, enemy archers and enemy reach guys, right? You want to kill arbalisters, you want to kill pikemen, you want to kill necros, and all of those targets stand directly behind another guy who stands in front of them. I mean, your archers are garbage if you're just shooting whichever guy they put in the way that you have to deal with. Well, bullseye versus fast adaptation. Both are accuracy perks. My issue with fast adaptation is shield hits reset your fast adaptation. So if you, and I can't remember now if bush hits did it as well, but essentially when you miss with archers, a large portion of your misses count as hits because they're hitting a shield or hitting terrain. And one of those, it wasn't both of those. I can't remember which one of those. I can't remember if it was hitting terrain or hitting shields. I think it's hitting shields. Resets fast adaptation, which is our biggest problem with fast adaptation. We tried that as well. So that's why I don't like fast adaptation. Drop, recover, fast adaptation. Shields don't reset it, then it must be bouncing into bushes because one of them. Unless they patch that. I didn't see anything about it. Okay. So is this the build we're gonna settle on? Are we really gonna try fucking archers without Colossus when without range defense? Why would Overwhelm be very good at this patch? Minus cover plus Colossus. I seem to remember the jabs being fairly damn intensive. I make dedicated throwing so you can have crippling strikes and execution on throwers to combine with a duelist. Execution might be okay. I don't need crippling strikes on throwing javelins. Throwing javelins already provide wounds on every single attack. Recover for Colossus. Kind of. This feels like we're gonna stam cap like immediately. But I am scared of my survivability of this. So potentially, I mean, if we just don't Headhunter. Where would we put Headhunter then if we're not going to put it on archers? It's such a give me for archers. All your targets are better off. Like, it makes archers go from incredible to like godlike to me. You can guarantee headshots. Crossbow Headhunter. Still can't shoot twice in a round with crossbow. Doesn't seem very useful to me. Right? Can you? What is it to shoot now? Crossbow? It reloads 6. I just was using one, but I've forgotten what it is now. Is there some way with Killing Frenzy you can do that? Headhunter's great. Something has to go. Don't disagree. What about dropping Bullseye and just picking good targets? It's almost like we had a whole conversation about Bullseye, and I have yet to see anyone refute it. So sure, you justify why I don't need Bullseye, and I'm willing to drop it. Drop quick hands? You can't drop quick hands. Like no recover build would survive the early game but stand out in the late game. Set up your archers in ways where there won't be any obstacles. But the obstacles aren't based on my positioning. The obstacles are based on my opponent's position. My opponent moves in such a way as to always present the obstacle. Try shooting a necromancer without bullseye. Drop duelists. Nope. Drop student. You don't gain a skill perk for dropping student. Student gives you two skill points when it finishes. So student costs you 1 early, and then when you hit level 11, it gives you the 1 back. So you get 2 points at 11 instead of 1. So dropping student doesn't change anything. What the argument for and against student is if you need the point that the perks now, then you trade slower leveling over time for immediate perks now. That's the trade-off for student. Try Headhunter out. So maybe, I don't know. So I don't know what we do with that then. So we have that 1 point right here. So this is the build unless we are willing to give up Colossus for recover. And it does feel bad to have recover, so no recover. So we could try no recover. We could say, hey, we're gonna invest in some pots for this. So we could do the no range defense, no recover archer. Do you switch between bow and throwing multiple times? Yeah. And you also switch not only between bow and throwing multiple times in a battle, but you switch between your 2 sets of throwing weapons. We find out Steel Brow is pretty dang good if you have a toss-up level over a perk. No. Recommend I use throwing weapons with the new guns. Kill Berserker and Bullseye, and then they don't need fatigue. Why would you? Yeah, I guess it does. It's an interesting question that will bring us down another rabbit hole. I don't know if we want to do that right now. Okay, so let's just get this build down before I forget it. So this is Colossus, right? So this is student, Colossus, Bullseye, bow spec, do it that. Oh shit, Colossus, Bullseye, bow spec. One is a skip, right? We end up with cans to get past here. Gonna be entirely useless for a long period of time. This nimble down here, and then it's probably berserk into killing frenzy. And then it is already have quick hands here, so we're coming in forward to the final ones we want to do, Headhunter and Duelist. There's no way we can skip. No way we can skip that fucking quick hands. Yes, there is. We can get throwing spec before quick hands if we want. So we could go this into Colossus, into Bullseye, into bow spec, into throwing spec, into nimble, into berserk, into killing frenzy, into Headhunter, into quick hand, into duelist, or into duelist and quick hand. That seems better to me. Bullseye is entirely useless when using throwing weapons. On. Sure. Use this when you're using melee weapons too. Okay. Again, chat. I'll put this out one more time, and please, if you are wanting me to drop Bullseye and wish to offer reasons to do that, please address this point. Right. The point that you have to address with Bullseye is there are too many targets that you need to hit that hide behind things when you're using archers, and that is every humanoid that you're fighting with arbalists, every dangerous humanoid. So noble armies with arbalisters, noble armies with pikemen, noble armies with any of the back rank noble armies, right? High damage, high accuracy targets that are lightly armored. Those are all behind other people and stay behind other people. That's true of necros. It's true of the humanoids, of the human armies, and then the other option, and then chosen. Chosen's the other reason why I bring that. And you're right. Bullseye is not particularly good versus chosen. You want that. Yeah, the lack of recover is ew. Split into a pure archer, no throne, then a throne specialist, no bow, both get recover. But the problem is twofold with that, right? The first is the whole point of designing this character is this character goes to every single fight. You don't have to run two sets of characters. If we had an infinite roster and we didn't have to pay people individually, yeah, go all specialists. But this is a unit that is good in all of the fights that you can bring it to. Fights and goblins, fights and goblins, fights and undead, fights versus ancient undead and regular undead, fights versus all of the humanoid armies, including up to noble armies, all the way through nomads, nobles, barbarians, and southerners. And it fights everything except Kraken and what's the other one that doesn't fight well? Doesn't fight well versus orcs. Necromancers isn't necessary. All right. Anyways, so I'm willing to try this. This is no range defense. This is the tweaks we'd be doing to this. Other than that, the ones I don't know. Maybe we try this one. So I don't really care about bags and belts. I got Headhunter and Colossus into this build, which is interesting to me. And what does it do better? Like, what's the advantage of this? We get Headhunter, which is a damage perk, and we get Headhunter. Headhunter and better use. Better counter ranged, right? I mean, there is a point. There's a limit to how much range defense is going to be useful to you if the opponent only targets lower range defense targets for them. So, okay. Yeah, it's not going to be I guess it's not no range defense. It's low range defense. All right. And the downside of this is, what fights are we likely to stam out with an archer fight? I feel like you're likely to stam out a lot. I don't remember archers having that much fucking stam, and they use a lot of it, especially if they're triple shooting around. Are we potentially, like, are we really believing that we can do this with no recover? What if all your archers have equal range defense? Then they shoot the frontliner. Why do you think I named the frontliner after you? All right. Drop Colossus for recover. Yeah, I mean, that's the question, isn't it? All right, let's see if this is viable. Without recover doesn't work well. I'll ignore those type of comments, I think. All right, let's take a look. So that's the first tweak we're gonna try. The mega tweaks. What, if anything, are we tweaking here? I like taunt, but taunt doesn't always do what it's supposed to be doing, and it kind of feels a little gimmicky sometimes. It is very nice when you have a brother trapped next to an orc warlord. Orc warlord has a single target weapon like a cleaver, and you're like, hey, orc warlord, attack my tank, and don't attack my brother who's standing next to you hitting them. That's really nice. But it does feel like the one that's probably most disposable. Maybe adrenaline too. Maybe your archers don't need Colossus and Nimble if you use dodge. Archers use dodge and end up with 150 initiative. That's 23 range defense and melee defense at the start of the fight. I think they're doing different things, right? Because we can, instead of dodge, we could take anticipate. Then we end up with a lot of range defense too. We don't get the melee defense, but most of the time my archers aren't in melee range. We probably get better range defense than you get as dodge, I suspect. Anticipate and leveling it, but maybe not. Also, are you leveling initiative with 150 initiative? How often do we melee dangerous enemies? Taunt is mildly useful. I think is adrenaline one of the places where it's really not. I think adrenaline probably comes off megas now. And there's an argument for taunt off. What are we trying to run in here? Steelbrow and Colossus. So what is this right now? This is Shield Spec and Colossus. I don't think we've ever used Steelbrow there. Just too annoying. Colossus is so nice on a fucking tank. Pathfinder. I'm interested in trying the stam neutral two-handers to see what that feels like. That feels like a solution to a problem that we've been having, which is we need really good brothers, but really good brothers don't show up all that much. Yeah, taunt can do things like make taunt has two major uses, right? It's the situation I just described where one of your brothers is at risk of dying. There's an enemy who could attack him, and taunt keeps him alive from that. And the other one is when you have when you're pushing like an undead like spear wall, when you're attacking into their pikes, you can double taunt on your turn to make the pikes attack the guy. I mean, is there other things we want on this? So we should talk about this. Like, what is the, why would we want 9 lives on a mega tank? So 9 lives is useful when you die. That's the only time it's useful. Isn't Steelbrow useful lots more times than the times you die? So isn't that kind of like our last point of defense? Great in the arena and against taunt. Hunt against vampires is really nice too. Yeah, I don't disagree. Very unlucky and get headshot by Lindworms 3 times. Isn't Steelbrow just as good then? Here's some on a mega. I kind of like the idea of keeping taunt. It is useful. I'm just trying to think of when. So does this just essentially we just drop adrenaline and pick up Steelbrow? Is that just the only change? Are we happy with those changes? Analyze might be core and quick frontline build. It's core for me. Do you have an argument for why, Graves, besides just restating the fact that you like it? Colossus before Steelbrow. Well, I mean, we can. Okay, sure. Let's look at these are the perks we want, but let's take a look at the order. That seems to be triggering a lot of you guys in chat. Let's kind of go through there. So student recover, rotate. Okay. So the general issue with early ones here is that you're just trying to get passes. I guess we could Steelbrow early. I guess this would probably realistically be student Colossus. Maybe even not. I mean, megas are supposed to be cheap early brothers, so let's say we can do this instead. So it goes Colossus, Steelbrow, rotate. Cover. Underdog. Battle Forged. Doesn't get us Ronnie quick enough doing this. You could also look at the Nimble variant of this, by the way. Ronnie. Scored a lot of stats here. I'm particularly annoyed about New Fearsome. New Fearsome's going to be a bitch to deal with. I'll face your argument. New 9 I think it's worth consideration for most builds, specifically for quick hands builds. When I was puzzling out how to trim the requirements needed for each monolith, I started to abandon non-quick hand builds for one main reason. My brother started to lose armor and knock on death's door. I could change backline. Knock on the How is quick hands related to that though? So you're running like reach weapons from behind when your armor dies. Is that an argument for rotate? Are you just walking away out of melee range then? Like 9 lives procs and you just walk away kind of thing?
Fellowship expands.
Do Sarfo.
Praise the sub.
Far so god. So far so good. Probably trying to say. This new fearsome just has an increased chance to make the target take resolve damage basically, based on the resolve of your brother. If you want resolve on megas, is fortified mine worth a look? It's interesting. Thanks, man. And hammers maces with 2-handed pole variants, yeah. I can see that. I don't understand how that makes 9 lives better, but I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, hey, my brothers take a lot of damage up front. Rather than make them useless for the rest of the fight, we can then cycle them to the back and have somebody else take their spot. Then they can do reach damage. That seems good. But how is 9 lives useful for that logic? What does 9 lives do for you that just getting hit, the more melee defense would have done better, or more HP or something? All right, so we're looking at the way to build this, right? Okay, so this is 8, and then it's indom. Want indom as soon as humanly possible on these things. Best skill ever. We need wrote that already, so then it would be so. So student Colossus. Rotate. Cover. We're looking at underdog. So how good is underdog, right? It's every adjacent opponent past number 1 is 5 melee defense, correct? So in general, very good, amazing. Underdog is great. All right, chat. Yes, chat. Let's talk opportunity cost. How does it compare to reach advantage, which is not something for a tank, so we don't have to worry about that direct comparison on the mega. But how does it compare to dodge? Think about this. Your megas are rarely surrounded by more than 3. But it's often have 2 to 3 touching them, in which case it's 10 defense. But it also has the, I guess, thinking about it too, I'm thinking of the reach attackers. So things like skeleton pikes, who are attacking a mega with 3 things around it. They would have a plus 30 with backstabber, and they only get a plus 15 otherwise. So it's about 15. So it's 15 with 3, and it's 10 for 2. Or 15 for 3 from the back ranks, and 10 for 3 in the front ranks. Otherwise, it's 5. Right? Completely negates backstabber on enemies. No, it doesn't. It halves backstabber. Or rather, it makes backstabber just a basic bonus. So what are we getting realistically from a a Battleforged brother who we just throw in, you know, he's a Battleforged brother, so he's wearing heavy armor, and we don't worry about his stam. We're not doing anything. I mean, he has recover, but he's just using that when he's out of stam. What are we doing then? Like, what type of melee defense does he get from dodge? 5? 7? Like we're defending the old builds. You know why the old builds are there after 11 seasons or 12 seasons? They're there because they work. Yeah, what we're doing is justifying changes. If we're making changes, we need to know why those would be better than the existing stuff. To do that, you have to deal with the pros and cons of the old builds. Don't you want to maximize Mega's melee defense? No. If I could take all the perks, I would take all the perks. And opportunity cost. At 60 INI after armor dodges 4 melee defense. So there it would be much worse. So that's like that okay, so that makes that evaluation probably just fine. So in other words, Underdog is probably the most valuable single defensive melee perk we can get here, right? Does Underdog suffer from the melee defense drop off? Not sure. I don't think that's a comparison. I think that's just after a certain, I guess my guess would be no, right? Because I think how that works is once you reach a certain point of melee defense, all your melee defense has diminishing returns and what it does for you after that. But Underdog works by reducing your opponent's attack value, not by increasing your melee defense value. So it probably works fine. Anyways, so that's probably Underdog then. That's Battleforged. After Battleforged is Indom. After Indom is Brawny. Or Taunt. That's probably not changed very much. Does that make sense about why it might sound like we're defending existing builds? We're not. We're trying to implement reasons to change. So cover Underdog. Level 2, 5, 7 is Battleforged. The guess could be Nimble. Then if we rolled with that, it's an Indom. I wish I found the rest of the word now. It's Indomitable. And then Ronnie, Taunt, Build Spec, and what? What's the last piece? Ironbrow? Interesting ordering. All right. And what do we get if we... Nothing, right? Yeah. All right. Is there a different version of this tank? Like, is there a different, like, is there a better version of Mega? Like, what's the nimble version of this look like? It drops Brawny and picks up dodge, maybe. But that feels really painful. Like, tanks want resolve, melee defense. They want that on regardless of whether or not they're nimble or not. And you're not going to ever have initiative, and you're going to get swung on a lot. You're going to be 0 stam like 98% of your life as a tank. I don't really feel like that's a dodge build to me. Not before shield spec. Dodge nimble is good versus armor pen. Yep. Plus dodge greater than Brawny. For the nimble build. I don't know that you can do lone wolf with them. I don't really think there's a lot of formations that benefit from being 3 tiles away. I have a very hard time using lone wolf. Very, very hard time. Never seems to be good. We've tried shit with like 70 resolve brothers with like lone wolf riposte, like watermill builds, right? We still found it to be kind of shit. First of all, the AI does stuff like, oh, you're riposting, we're gonna shield bash you. And then it's like, still lose resolve rolls. If you get surrounded like 5-way surround, like when they move up next to you, you still, even with like 70 or 80 resolve, you're still fucking losing resolve rolls. Shield spec with the new shields. Shield spec is twofold, right? It's melee defense, but more importantly, it's HP on shields. HP on shields is actually kind of nice. Anytime your opponent spends time smashing your shield with a weapon, is time they're not spending attacking you. I almost always like it when my opponents do that. Especially like with the late game tanks, I tend to run deliberately 2 shields in my inventory when dealing with orcs. And I'm happy if they spend 3 or 4 attacks fucking killing my shield and I just pull out another shield. Alright. So looking at this, if we build this as megas for nimble, I think we end up like, what does Brawny get replaced with here? Resilient? Relentless with dodge and nimble. Yeah, it hasn't been that good for us so far. What about dodge? Dodge here on this tank. We just did the math, and well, rather one of the viewers did the math and reported it to us. Somewhere around 4 melee defense. You know what gives you 4 melee defense, or gives you almost the equivalent of 4 melee defense? Just take fucking gifted. And you're gonna roll melee defense, HP, and fatigue on that, or whatever. I don't think dodge makes it in here. Not on this character. And I don't see, again, like, the problem with a mega tank with dodge is this. You're deliberately putting this character in a position or rotating him into a position where he's in the most danger and gets swung on the most number of times, right? Individual points of defense is better the higher it goes, only until diminishing returns, right? Like, I don't disagree. Like, I think melee defense is probably the best skill in the game. The best talent in the game, or stat in the game is the word I'm looking for. I don't know. I don't know where we would get. Like, what are we dropping? So we did that. Say we did the other version of it, right? So this is the Battle Forged version of that. So you get nimble there, and you get here. So maybe you could do, instead of resilient here, you could do dodge here. You could do, this could be Brawny dodge. And this could be Battle Forge nimble. I just do with my spreadsheet. And that could be, where is it? Here, Steelbrow. The other one called? Relentless. All right, so I'll buy that. I'll buy that for these reasons. Nimble prevents HP damage, period, right? Prevents damage coming in. So I believe a nimble brother probably lives through getting hit in the head in a way that a Battleforged brother might not. So I'm willing to try that. We can try the 2 versions. We can try this, the nimble and the Battleforged version. Every time we've done this late game, in previous runs, we've found that the nimble version just peters out. It runs into too many issues with it. Doesn't scale well off gear. It doesn't scale well off gear. Enemy weapons that do annoying effects screw you with nimble, like bleeds, etc. And just haven't found it as good. All right, let's stop trying to reinvent the wheel. The point of this morning is to decide what wheels we're using for this run. We're gonna keep doing that. You have Turks take both nimble and Battleforge. No. I mean, maybe you can build some one-offs, but I don't think building for very specific, like, ultra late game high-end gear is worth doing that right now. Okay, so we're good on these 2 builds, or at least trying these 2 builds right now. All right, so what do we change here? We got dropped adrenaline, added more survivability, and survivability, fuck it, I don't care. And then the last thing that we did is added a nimble variant. Okay. Two-handed adrenaline build. I mean, this is no longer that. This is just two-handers, right? All right. Anything we want to change out of this? Well, adrenaline seems like one to go. I think dropping indom is so painful. Are we really going to drop indom? Sure, I did forget to update these. I should just nuke this. People are reading into this too much. We can re-add that later. Not useful right now. Okay. Still haven't heard the justification, Graves, for not the quick hands. The quick hand justification makes some sense for what you're trying to do, but I don't understand the 9 lives. Like, how is 9 lives giving you the ability to bring a brother to a useful position where he wouldn't have otherwise? Necro's worse now. My archer seemed worse. I don't know. Maybe Necromancer's got a range defense increase, or maybe my archers are just shit. I'm not sure. Okay, what are we doing for this? Isn't indom better since no adrenaline on tanks? Wait, what? Argument. I saw the quick hand stuff. Oh, I missed did I miss a comment where, oh, I'm sorry if I missed it. I'll try to find it. Posts. Created too. What do I see? Different website that tracks. Reverse bone plating. Okay, so looking at this for the two-handers, do we need this? So what do we get? We're missing one here. What else do we want on these? Oh, we have a lot of things we want. Oh, I see. You're trying to make up for the fact that... So I ran indom on everybody prior to this, man the mic, because I found it to be really solid. In general. More mileage than advantage on maces. You're comparing apples and oranges there. All right. So which ones could we potentially get rid of? Maybe rotate. I mean, it's the same problems, right? They're going to be in the front line. Underdog still does all the things we needed to do. Maybe you could argue for something else here, like reach advantage or dodge if you're going that route. Is there a difference between two-handers for nimble and two-handers not for here? Like where does this need to change? So we'd love to add Colossus because it's survivability. We'd love to add each reach advantage and Steel Brow. Steel Brow is a perk I've never liked to take, but it's a perk for dealing with the fact that life just got fucking scary. I don't think Relentless or Resilient are going to be any good here, but maybe we can build nimble variants of this. All right, Backstabber and Pathfinder. I don't think Backstabber is going to end up with it. What are we actually getting? We're just considering the 0. So what would it look like? So let's add a version of this again. And then let's look at what would it be if we added a no recover portion of this. If we tried to build the version that was the stam neutral ones. And I like the idea of it because what a stam neutral lets you do is it lets you take a shittier brother early and then make him into a brother who wouldn't basically be able to do the two-handed recover variant. You can do into something else. That's an interesting idea. I really like the idea of that. It makes you can pick up shittier brothers sooner to be onto your builds. No, I'm happy to work through it. Let's work through it. You're welcome. Certainly welcome to comment on it. But I'm happy to work through it too. All right. So the things that we maybe can go then are rotate. So that one maybe can go. And not rotate, excuse me. Recover rather can go. And did we drop rotate on these guys? These guys are not going to have stamina. Probably not going to be able to rotate very often without recover and so you're probably not getting that either. That's a dumb stat. So what does this look like duplicate wise? Probably ending up with that dropping. Probably not indoming very often. You don't have fucking stamina. Okay. And are you berserking? Not. Potatoes for. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, because you don't have the stand to berserk, right? You're running these. Not doing whipping because whipping is super fucking stam intensive. The two-hander build. So you're probably not quick handing like bombs. At Filthy Robot, have you tried stam neutral two-hand build? Lol. Alright, I guess I should label what we're working on right now. Then keep going. So you're probably using these Graves as a. Is it probably your 9 lives quick hand reach weapon guys, huh?
A kind gesture.
Thanks, Galg. Bucks for the raffle. Having no stam would make dodge better. I don't think so. Isn't dodge based on percentage stam? So isn't it exactly equal? Oh, Pathfinder's got to go in there. Yep, you're right. Adding donation messages, thanks. Just a second. I like the vertical mouse. It's been really good for my wrist, but fuck, it's harder to use. Regular mouse.
Another poor fool, lost in time and space.
Auto. Okay, dodge is based on absolute stam. Really? Okay, back to our build. I think I'm not distracted for the moment. What else would we want in here? We could get some more survivability in here, which would be really nice. Bronnier Colossus or Battleforger Nimble. Sure, those are the two attempts. What else would we want? We could do Headhunters with this, potentially. I guess you're not going to be swinging multiple times, so it's not super useful, but across multiple attacks. What else am I missing for perks that could be useful for this? I just... maybe I could find the vertical mousing. Remind me later. I don't want to be distracted by that, but remind me later, guys, and I will come back to that. What's the 10th roll of the spreadsheet in gold? Because, of course, for 10 is rich. Because at one point it was a question mark row we haven't fixed. All right. What else would we do for this? Okay. So I'm looking roughly to build a similar line that we normally build, which is a mix of two-handers and tanks in the front rank with a mix of throwing archers and bannermen in the back rank, right? That's the rough game plan for that. Two-handers fill the location of the serious damage dealers up front, the ones who are supposed to tank and gank, so they're going to have melee attack and melee defense, and are supposed to be trading essentially for this. Flank strikes gives chosen concussions. Sure, concussion's good. I don't think you're going to wound orcs very often, but maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a limit on which two-handers we would use. Are we using all two-handers with this? I think this build is not going to be the same. I think the cleaver builds are going to be something different. So it's not going to be cleavers. It's probably going to be, you're going to need a weapon spec in a build like this. Although we have it there already, right? So is it still going to be for all of them? Just thinking through this. Are there any that we aren't using with this? Probably not. Do I have a table for indebted with 7 perks? Nope. Gifted. Well, I mean, we're sitting on a lot of talent points here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 talent points available for this. Is there anything we actually have to have here? I mean, if I look at the list of things here, we're looking at reach advantage, steel brow, possibly resilient, possibly relentless, dodge. If that ends up with that. I mean, that might, I mean, maybe we have the room to build relentless and dodge. Probably, you're probably right. With the new stam neutral, we're probably not getting any value out of swords. So we're probably looking realistically at axes, maces, or hammers. Maces and hammers tend to have those really nice rider effects that come with them. So sure, we could see some of those. Headshots with maces and hammers are extremely valuable. I don't know that that's worth doing something like a headhunter for. It probably is not, but maybe. You guys know what happens if you hit someone with the two-handed axe that hits head and body? Does it trigger headhunter? I mean, it probably doesn't matter because it hits head and body each time, but it does have a primary location. Ends in a pole arm. Ronnie with stam neutral. Question. With crippling strikes is so good with pole hammer. You can see that, although only versus orcs and chosen, right? Yeah. Where are we getting dodge? If we realistically were to use dodge, where are we? I mean, I guess I could have been like fucking gifted here too. What else are we possibly getting for defense here? So what is okay? What are we trying to do with this build? So what? Okay, so like the archer, you know, like we got a clear guy who's we're trying to use someone with a high range attack skill and get some value out of it. Great. The mega is the same deal. We're trying to use a cheap background that has good melee defense things, but not good elsewhere. Things like thieves come to mind. Possibly a fucking peddler or historian if you get really lucky. You know, like you're trying to use a brother who didn't roll well in the offense stat. Sure. What are we doing with the two-hander builds here? The two-hander's what? An early decent melee attack, decent melee defense thing? Like
A kind gesture.
P9 the donation. Does that show up on top? Yeah. Use of a low stam brother with high melee defense and initiative. Right? Like that could be something. Or making use of a low stam brother with high melee attack and high melee defense. Right? Like that to me makes some sense with what we're trying to do with the two-handers. So what do we care about? Can we make dodge relentless work here? Do we just make dodge work here? Like what type of values are we getting out of this? You said 4 on a low initiative brother. So presumably it's 6 with relentless. That doesn't seem like a good investment of 2 talent points. Does this just become fucking gifted? So what other perks are we missing that could be useful on a brother like this? Fling strikes, executioner. We have enough perks, we can do things with quick hands, but I think the quick hands really want to be duelists, right? Maybe we can make 0. Anyone know what it costs to throw a grenade stam wise? Probably don't think duelists can be stam neutral though. Bring up too much stuff. 5 AP, but I don't know what the stam cost is. Rally. Second rally. Probably not. What if we could get rid of it? Would it be so nice to not run a banner? RA, Lone Wolf, Footwork, Reach Advantage. Overwhelm is interesting. The single attack, it never feels worthwhile. Two range attacker only gets a +5 attack bonus against your bro if you're adjacent to 2 enemies. No, it doesn't. +10. And if it's got backstab, it's +20, right? So duelist is a flat +3. So underdog's almost always gonna, or not duelist, excuse me, gifted's a flat +3. Okay, so looking through this, the other ones that we could potentially come up with here, we're not actually getting that much. So it was overwhelm potentially, but it doesn't seem like that's the right type of thing for this.
Win.
Executioner was interesting. Executioner and
Can you
crippling.
juggle?
Can I juggle? I cannot juggle. Threesome. So we're running these. What would kind